Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Essay. Today we are gonna see what if Issei is born the White Dragon Emperor. Part 1. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Inverted. Alright then Issei, hold out your left hand and try imagining the strongest image you can in your mind. Nodding Issei does as Riaz tells him to do, the young devil holding out his hand and closing his eyes, closing his eyes and thrusting his left hand into the air, drawing an image of Riaz's breasts into his mind. Issei remembering how they looked the first time he saw them after waking up next to the naked red-haired devil. Sacred gear. Issei shouts, focusing on the image as hard as he can. Something inside of him clicks, like a switch flipping inside his mind. Issei feels something on his back, the object resting over both shoulder blades, and the space between, Issei wondering just what is going on as he stands there with his left hand in the air, his hand balled into a fist. All around him the members of the occult research club look on, like Issei each of them is curious about the oddly shaped white sacred gear that is formed across his back. None of them recognizes the strange shape, the strange accoutrement looking almost like armor, yet it sticks off of Issei's back at an angle, several sections on the glowing wings like feathers. The wings themselves are a cyan-like color, an ethereal glow radiating off of them, as though the wings were made of light instead of flesh and bone. Issei's wingspan cuts across the room, the wings furled against the wall, a clear sign that there simply isn't enough room inside the club room to accommodate them. Huh? Issei asks, opening his eyes and looking over his left and right shoulders at the wings thing that is currently attached to him. What is this? Looking on, Akeno Himejima cocks her head to the side curiously, the vice president and Riaz queen curious as to what kind of sacred gear is just a pair of odd wings. Like Akeno, Yudo Kiba and Kaneko Taoju have no idea what Issei's sacred gear is, Kiba has never seen anything like it, and Kaneko doesn't even have a sacred gear, though she knows that they can come in a variety of forms. Only Riaz Gremory, heir to the noble devil house of Gremory and the only full-blood devil in the room, has even the slightest inkling as to what Issei's sacred gear is. Blinking, Riaz stares at her pawn, everything about Issei suddenly making sense. When she'd revived him, Issei had needed all 8 of her pawns, meaning that Issei should be a powerful devil. When she'd revived Akeno, Riaz had to choose either her queen or all 8 of her pawns, meaning Issei should at least have the same potential as Akeno, if not more so. That must be why that fallen angel targeted him. If that sacred gear is what I think it is, then he really is special, and my 8 pawns were well spent. But you? Issei asks, referring to her with her title rather than by her name, Riaz blinking in surprise when she suddenly finds herself the center of attention of the entire room, every pair of eyes in the room locked upon her. I need to read something, Riaz replies, walking around behind her desk, grabbing a book on the shelf there. Issei trails, reaching up and scratching the back of his head in embarrassment, feeling more than a little nervous about Riaz suddenly having to find a book. If my sacred gear is that horrible that she doesn't even know what it's called off the top of her head, Issei thinks to himself, his lips contorting in a frown. Setting her book on her desk, Riaz opens the tome, the book, a devil encyclopedia of sacred gears, including the 13 Longinus gears that are said to have the power to kill God. Her fingers flipping through the pages, Riaz finds the section devoted to the 13 Longinus gears, Riaz passing 3 of the 13, before Riaz finds what she's looking for. They're dividing the sacred gear that contains the vanishing dragon, Albion. Looking at the entry devoted to the Longinus, Riaz reads the description of the sacred gear, the entry talking about how the gear can allow the user to fly, along with the ability to divide another creature's strength in half after the user touches it, the division occurring every 10 seconds. Divine dividing, Riaz mumbles, her eyes locked on the page in front of her. Divine dividing? Issei asks curiously, and Riaz blinks, her head snapping up. Looking around at all the faces in the room with her, Riaz sees Issei's curiosity mirrored on the faces of the other members of her peerage. It's one of the 13 Longinus gears. Riaz explains. It has the power to divide an opponent's power in half and then absorb that lost energy as its own once every 10 seconds. Blinking, Issei's eyes go wide in surprise. So I can just take any opponent's strength from them? Issei asks, a part of him feeling incredibly lucky to have been granted the sacred gear he has. Another part of him though understands that what Riaz has said is too good to be true and she had to have forgotten something. You have to touch them first, Riaz explains, shaking her head in denial. It also only works on the last creature you touch, meaning if you accidentally touch an ally after touching your enemy, if you use the dividing power, then your ally will be affected. The same is true if your opponent suffers one of your divisions and then sends their subordinate or ally after you. If you touch another creature, then that is one that you'll divide, not necessarily the opponent you want to affect. So I have to be careful, Issei explains, and Riaz nods. Especially if you're fighting an opponent that's more than twice as strong as you are. Riaz explains to him. If they're that powerful, then even after being divided they'll still be stronger than you, and once they've suffered a division they'll likely know what you can do and use the following 10 seconds to try and beat you before it happens again. She has to explain everything to him. She doesn't want Issei to become overconfident because of his sacred gear's ability, which, while powerful, does have its limitations. Those limitations become glaringly obvious, especially when fighting multiple opponents, like during a raiding game or when fighting a fallen angel and its subordinates. In single combat, Issei's sacred gear is quite powerful, though once his opponent has fallen for it, Issei has essentially won the battle, so long as his opponent is unable to kill him before another 10 seconds pass. Or his opponent is more than twice as strong as he is. Rhea chooses not to give voice to the thought. The last thing she wants to do is make her newest servant apprehensive. "I think I understand," Issei says, his eyes dropping to the floor. "Not that you have anything to be depressed about," Rhea says, smiling assuredly at her latest servant, closing the book on her desk. "It makes sense why that fallen angel would try to kill you now. With your sacred gear you could easily kill one of them and are a huge threat to them." Though Issei trails, his hands balling into fists. The memory of Yuma murdering him after he'd taken her out on a date is still fresh with him. He can still clearly remember her smirking and talking down to him, telling him that if he was upset he should curse God for giving him the sacred gear in the first place. Now though, Issei thinks to himself, "With this divine dividing, I could beat her. Starting tomorrow you're going to be going through daily training with me," Issei. Rhea says, and Issei blinks, his anger toward Yuma flushed away at Rhea's statement. "Daily training?" Issei asks, and Rhea nods. "Every morning starting tomorrow I'll be at your house at 5 a.m. and I'll start training you," Rhea explains to him. "Train?" Issei asks, his sacred gear disappearing from his back. "That's right," Rhea explains. "Your sacred gear will get stronger the stronger you are," Rhea continues. "Should you absorb too much power your gear will vent it out to prevent it from hurting you, but if you grow stronger and train then your base ability will not only be greater, but you'll be able to absorb more power as well." Issei trails, and Rhea sits down in her chair. "Now then, on to business," Rhea begins, her tone suddenly brisk and businesslike. "Oh, here I go off to pass out flyers again," Issei thinks to himself. 6 hours later. Rolling his bike up to the apartment building, Issei Haidu parks his bike before getting off, the young devil climbing the steps toward the second-level door Rhea's told him about. Apparently Kaneko got 2 requests for tonight and Rhea's asked him to cover one of them. The first time he'd gotten a request, Issei had run into an otaku who was obsessed with an anime that Issei was also into, and he ended up getting into a heated discussion about it and then watched a bunch of it before he'd gone home. Approaching the door, Issei pushes the door open, calling out as he does. "Hello? Is anyone home?" Issei calls out, a part of him reminding himself that it's odd that someone would just leave their front door open. At least the creepy otaku kept his door locked. Stepping into the room, Issei calls out, an ominous feeling of dread falling over him as Issei closes the door behind him, Issei looking left and right, searching for some sign of the person who summoned him. "Hello," Issei calls out again. "I'm the devil you summoned from the Gremory family." No one calling out to him in response, Issei carefully steps into the house, the young devil forgetting to take his shoes off, Issei sticking his head into the living room of the apartment, and what the young man sees there makes him stop and stare. The dead body lies eviscerated on the floor, blood splattered everywhere, as though an entire pool of the stuff has been slopped everywhere. Staring at all the blood, Issei feels like he's suddenly stepped into a dream. He's never seen a dead body before, and now standing in the archway in some unknown person's apartment, Issei is seeing his first dead body, apparently every drop of blood in the sliced and shot corpse drawn out of the body and then splattered around it. "Well, how you doing, shitty devil?" A man's voice shocks Issei out of his delirium, his eyes searching for the source of the voice, Issei seeing a man sitting on the sofa near the corpse, completely laid back and relaxed in spite of the dead body not 5 feet away. Wearing a long coat and dressed in dark clothing, the man wears a grin on his lips, a cross around his neck, signifying that he has some loyalty toward the church. Pushing off the sofa, the man stands up, completely at ease with the eviscerated body in the room with him. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" Issei asks, taking a half step back. "Did you do this?" The grin getting wider, a chill runs down Issei's spine at the sight of that expression. "Of course." The man answers without a moment's hesitation. He was going to make a contract with a shitty devil and deserved to die. "You killed him just for summoning a devil?" Issei asks, not comprehending how a priest could be so callous about committing murder. "Obviously," the man answers. "If you even think of forming a contract with a piece of shit devil, then you're subhuman filth. I'm doing these people a favor by killing them before they can do something stupid and get involved with devils." Looking at the man, Issei feels like he's been slapped. Running into Asia and growing up a normal Japanese boy, Issei's only experience with the clergy has always been positive. He's only ever known priests and nuns to be loving and helpful. You're no priest. Issei denies, and the man grins, reaching into his jacket. Like a devil would know what makes a priest. He retorts cynically. Enough talk, shitty devil. My name is Fried Selzen and I'm the priest that's going to kill you. Pulling a strange gun and a sword hilt from his jacket, Issei narrows his gaze, the young devil about to ask what Fried intends to do when a blade of light shoots out of the sword hilt in his right hand. Seeing that blade, Issei steels himself, drawing on his sacred gear, activating it. Divine dividing. Issei calls out, the wings appearing behind him, Fried blinking in surprise at the sight of the furled wings sticking off of Issei's back. Wings? Fried asks, staring at them a moment. What good are wings going to do you inside, you stupid devil? Balling his hands into fists, Issei knows that he has to actually touch Fried before he can use his power against him. If Fried can immobilize him and then chop him up, Issei is as good as dead. How about this? Issei demands, jumping forward, moving as fast as he can, pulling his fist back as he crosses the distance between them, driving his fist into Fried's jaw with all the strength Issei can must. Ha! Issei calls out, punching the man. Unfortunately for Issei, he only recently became a devil and physically isn't much stronger than a normal human being. Seeing Fried stumble slightly from his blow, Issei jumps back, his wings allowing him to slide through the air, in spite of the fact that they're furled behind him, Issei landing on his feet as though it's second nature. That all you can do, shitty devil? Fried smiles, turning his head back toward Issei, his lips curled away from his teeth in a predatory smile. I'm going to enjoy killing you. Fried raising his gun, Issei steels himself. Come on, do it, Issei thinks to himself, not sure how to use his divine dividing's power to have his opponent's strength. Divide. A strange voice comes from the wings on his back, Fried blinking in surprise, his gun faltering in his outstretched hand. While Fried mumbles, feeling like he's just been through a workout, the priest blinking in surprise at the sudden exhausted feeling hitting him. Feeling Fried's strength surging into him, Issei feels like $1 million. He's never felt better in his life, like he's on a sugar rush, every part of him feeling alive and charged, as though every part of his body were brimming with power. Why you, Fried mumbles, focusing on his gun hand, steadying his hand as he takes aim at Issei. Moving instinctually, Issei shifts to his left, Fried pulling the trigger as the gun goes off, his shot aimed at Issei's face, the bullet goes wide, the shot cleanly missing and striking the wall. Not feeling so strong? Issei asks, and Fried growls, shifting his gun, pointing it toward Issei. Don't fucking talk down to me, you shitty devil. Fried growls, squeezing the trigger. Trying to dodge another bullet, Fried doesn't stop with just one, instead the priest fires his gun several times, the shots largely disorganized, Issei unable to dodge all of them, one of the bullets grazing his left arm, a second shot hitting him in the right thigh. Feeling a spike of burning pain, Issei's face contorts in agony, his blood spurting from the wound as the bullet rips through his body and then goes out the other side, Issei grunting in pain, both hands grasping at the wound as 10 seconds tick by. Divide. The voice says again, and Fried again feels like he's been kicked in the gut, his remaining strength cut in half. Fried feels like he's just finished running a marathon, the man exhausted, barely able to stand. What have you? Fried mutters, stabbing his sword into the floor, the priest leaning on the energy sword as the blade itself flickers. Feeling energy flowing into him, Issei can still feel the pain coming from his right thigh, the wound still bleeding, even as Issei clutches at the wound. God, that hurts. What the hell kind of bullet hurts a devil like this? A blessed bullet, you shitty devil, Fried explains as though he can hear Issei's thoughts. It burns through your flesh and bone like a hot knife through butter. Clutching at the wound, Issei glares at the priest leaning on his weapon. Opening his mouth to say something, Issei is about to condemn the priest and tell him that he's lost the fight when a woman's scream cuts him off, Issei recognizing the woman's voice from when he ran into her not 3 days ago. Issei-san. Asia's voice calls out to him, both Issei and Fried turning toward the sound, Asia standing near the doorway, her face contorted in confusion, the young blonde nun not sure what is going on as blood flows down Issei's leg. Asia, quick. Help me. Fried calls out to her, motioning toward Issei with his gun hand as he continues. This shitty devil has done something to me, and I need your help before he kills me, just like he killed this poor man. His face contorting in outrage, Issei turns his attention back to Fried. You're the one who is responsible for that, not me. Issei denies. Quiet, you shitty devil. Fried shouts back, turning his attention back to Asia. Quick, heal me before he can recover from his wound. Don't listen to him, Asia-chan. Issei entreats her. He's the one who killed this human and he's trying to kill me. I was sent here because I was summoned. Why would I kill the person who summoned me without even getting them to sign a contract first? Asia hesitates, the young woman not sure how to proceed. Running into Issei, Asia doesn't think he's bad person. The fact that Issei helped her when she had no idea where she was means a lot to her. He also saw her heal someone and didn't call her a heretic or ostracize her. Instead, he told her that he thought it was a useful power and actually praised her. "Are you really a devil, Issei-san?" Asia asks in a tiny voice, Issei swallowing the saliva in his mouth, his pain temporarily forgotten. Slowly nodding, Issei can feel a well of shame form in his stomach. "I am a devil, Asia-chan," Issei admits. "I never meant to hide it from you, and I decided that I would never see you again, yet." "What are you waiting for, you stupid blonde bimbo?" Fried growls at her. "Get over here and heal me before." Divide. The voice comes from Issei's wings again, Fried's strength once again flushing out of him like water down a drain. His blade disappearing, Fried falls to floor, his eyes feeling heavy, his entire body feeling like a lead weight. "Fried-san," Asia mumbles, moving to try and help him when a red magic circle appears in the space behind Issei. The blonde-haired man jumps out of the circle, a sword in hand. Yudo Kiba lands in front of Issei, his weapon held in front of him. Oh my, Keno's voice carries as the vice president of the Occult Research Club strides through the circle, Ria's Gremory's queen, followed closely by Kaneko and Ria's. "Everyone," Issei mumbles, surprised by the entire club suddenly showing up. "There was a barrier up, so we had no idea something was amiss until just a few minutes ago," Ria's explains, looking around the room, taking in the sight of the mutilated body on the floor. "Stupid bitch," Fried mumbles, struggling to push himself to his hands and knees. "Now we've got a bunch more shitty devils to deal with, and all because you failed to keep the barrier up." Asia mumbles, looking between Fried and Issei, the young woman clearly confused with what's happening around her. "Issei, are you hurt?" Rias asks, concern her voice as the red-haired princess of ruin approaches her pawn, Issei, momentarily turning his attention to the devil that saved his life. "I be fine but you," he assures Rias, giving his master a momentary grin. Her gaze pointedly dropping to the growing red stain on Issei's right pant leg. Issei grins, reaching up and scratching the back of his head in embarrassment. Blinking, Kaneko glances up toward the ceiling. "Fallen angels incoming." The white-haired rook offers curtly, Ria's blinking in surprise at the new information. Fried mumbles, just speaking requiring effort. "Looks like the tables have turned now, eh?" Kaneko grab Issei, "We're leaving." Rias declares, Kaneko nodding as Issei blinks in surprise. "What?" Issei demands, surprise in his voice as Kaneko moves to him, the white-haired girl scooping him up as though he were a sack of potatoes, slinging him over his shoulder. "We can't stay here and fight, Issei." Rias counters. "Doing so would serve no purpose and only put all of us in mortal danger for no reason." Akeno, Rias addresses her queen. Nodding, the dark-haired woman raises her hands, already well aware what her master intends for her to do. The magic circle appearing, Issei shakes his head in denial. "No. We can't leave Asia-chan with them." Issei tries to argue, and Ria shakes her head in denial. "Only members of the Gremory family can travel with the circle." Rias denies, and Issei futilely tries to break free. "Then leave me here. Let me go. I have to protect her from them." Issei tries to argue, Asia blinking in surprise at his declaration. He's trying to help her, to keep her safe even though he's a devil, and several fallen angels are on their way, no doubt to aid her and Fried and kill him and his compatriots. Issei-san, Asia speaks slowly, surprise in her voice at the young man's selflessness, at his willingness to risk his life for someone he hardly knows. "Asia?" "No." Issei denies, reaching out to try and close the distance between them, even as the magical circle rises, transporting the Gremory devils away from the scene. Sitting on a chair naked, Issei can feel Ria's breasts pressed against his back, her arms draped around his body. He can also feel a warm feeling all over his body, the feeling strongest on his arm, where he'd been grazed, and the leg where he'd been shot. "To think she's done this with me before." The thought of Ria's pressing her naked body against his sends all sorts of thoughts through Issei's mind, though those thoughts are tempered by his own embarrassment, both of his hands practically smashing against his groin, lest he allow Ria's to see his most intimate spot. "Yet she slept naked next to me already." There Ria's begins quietly. "I've done what I can." Nodding, Issei stands up, leaving the shower stall and closing the curtain behind him. Outside, the other members of the Occult Research Club wait quietly, Kaneko reading a book, while Yudo casually leans against a window, his head turned toward the window. The blonde boy looking out the window with a brooding expression, the young man seeming to broadcast the message, "I'm dark and mysterious," is that high school girls always seem to eat up. "The bullets that stray exorcist used were specially made to kill devils, so you'll need time to recover." Rias explains to him as the shower turns on, the sound of water splashing wafting into his. Pulling on a pair of boxers, Issei walks to love's seat closest to the shower, Akeno standing near the two-cushioned sofa with a medical kit in hand. "Stray exorcist?" Issei asks, his voice tinged with curiosity. Sitting down on the sofa, the bunch of them were kicked out of the church for being too radical. Yudo explains as he sits down across the table from Issei, Akeno, beginning to wrap a bandage around his arm as Riaz turns off the water for the shower. Without many other options, many of them chose to become servants of fallen angels. So you're saying Asia is like that freed bastard? The sound of water stopping Issei can hear the curtain being pulled back, Riaz answering his question. Whatever that nun is, you are a devil and she is the servant of a fallen angel. That's just how it is. But Issei mutters, not sure what to say even as Riaz takes a seat behind her desk, the red-haired devil clad in only a towel as she does. I need some more time with you to fully heal that wound on your leg. Riaz explains to him, her tone casual in spite of her extreme lack of clothing, Akeno tying the bandage around his arm before standing up, moving to his opposite side to bandage his leg. Okay. Issei agrees quietly, the young man not sure what else to say in response to that. It's because of his own weakness and stupidity that he got hurt in the first place. It doesn't help his dour mood any knowing that he left Asia in the hands of a bunch of fallen angels, the same type of creatures that killed him, just because he might have a sacred gear inside of him. Asia already has powers, unlike Issei she was able to manifest her ability without first being reincarnated, what are the fallen angels going to do with her? But Issei begins, only to have Riaz cut her off. If it's about the morning training you can forget it. As long as your leg isn't fully healed I'm not going to do anything to exacerbate the injury. We'll wait until you're fully healed to start training. Nodding Issei swallows the saliva in his mouth, trying to figure out how to properly word what he wants to say, even as he pulls his pants up, closing the clasp and zipping his fly. But you about Asia-chan Issei begins, and Riaz shakes her head in denial. You don't have to worry about that nun Issei. Riaz assures him. But Issei continues stubbornly. She's being used by those fallen angels. Who knows what they plan to do with her? Exactly. Riaz replies matter-of-factly. As long as the fallen angels have a use for her they won't kill her. Riaz continues. Worrying about it won't accomplish anything anyway. The peace that we have in this town is fragile. If I were to attack the fallen angels in their home, it would be tantamount to suicide. Besides, it could start a war, which would cost countless lives, not only your lives, but also any humans that unfortunately get caught in the crossfire. Feeling chastised Issei lowers his gaze. Issei mumbles, not sure what to say. I have contacts in this town Issei. Riaz explains to him. I listen, and if one of them tells me that the fallen angels are preparing for something, then I'll consider moving to rescue that nun. Until then the best thing you can do is focus on recovering. Nodding Issei quickly bobs his head in agreement. Thank you, but you Issei replies, glad that at least Riaz isn't completely denying his request. Unbeknownst to Issei Riaz understands fully just how much he wants to rescue Asia. Issei has repeatedly stated that the two of them are friends, and if one of Ria's friends were in clutches of a bunch of fallen angels, not even her brother would be able to stop her from mounting some sort of rescue. As it is now though Issei is injured, and there is no immediate need to rescue the girl, since she is in no apparent danger. That doesn't mean I'm going to just let her suffer in the hands of those fallen angels Riaz thinks to herself, already forming the beginnings of plan for when, not if, they mount a rescue. Sitting in the park Issei sighs, feeling exhausted even though he slept like a rock the night before. Sitting on the bench Issei's leg still hurts, and the young man can't stop his thoughts from coming back to the blonde woman he left in the clutches of the fallen angels. I wonder if she knows Yuma. If she does then I wouldn't pass that monster woman to do all sorts of unspeakable things to innocent Asia-chan. Just thinking about it, Issei can clearly picture Yuma in her fallen angel form standing over Asia, the blonde woman tied up while Yuma holds a whip, Asia crying out for mercy, while Yuma continues to cruelly and mercilessly whip her, Yuma grinning all the while. The fallen angel reveling in Asia's misery. Blinking Issei shakes his head back and forth, pushing the image out of his mind. No. I can't think like that. If I'm going to think like that I need to think about how to rescue her or how to get stronger. Issei-san. A familiar voice wafts into his ears, Issei blinking in surprise at the sound of the woman's voice. Turning around Asia is standing there, wearing her nun habit and looking at him with curiosity plastered on her features. Asia? Sitting in a booth of fast food restaurant Asia stares down at her hamburger, her face betraying the face that she's never had a burger before. Seeing the look on her face Issei grins, reaching down and picking up his own sandwich. Asia-chan? Issei asks, Asia blinking in surprise. Yes Asia asks, looking up from her food. You eat it like this Haim-san. Issei explains, opening his mouth wide and taking a big bite from his cheeseburger. I never knew people could eat like that Asia trails, astonishment coloring her tone. Picking up her burger Asia takes a small bite, chewing the food a moment. It's good. Asia endorses the food, Issei chuckling mirthfully. So how did you end up in the park Asia-chan? Issei asks casually, the blonde woman blinking before she turns away momentarily, her eyes momentarily clouding over with sadness before the emotion disappears from her gaze, Asia looking back at him happily. I had some time off, so I decided to take a walk around town. Then I saw you, Issei-san, and, well, since you've got the day off, why don't we hang out? Issei asks, and Asia smiles at him. Okay. The corrupted angel. Together Asia and Issei spend the afternoon together. They go to the arcade, play games, go into a photo booth together, and Issei even wins her a plush doll based off a popular cartoon about battling monsters that live inside small balls. I don't think I've ever had this much fun before, Asia explains, the two of them standing near a small bank of vending machines, a can of soda dropping into the receptacle near the bottom of the machine. I'm glad. Issei replies, bending down to pick up his soda when a spike of pain flares up his leg, Issei winching at the sudden feeling, the pain from his wound intensifying when Issei puts additional weight on the leg. Damn, Issei thinks to himself, the young devil metaphorically biting his tongue. He doesn't want to worry Asia. Watching his body language, Asia can tell that something is wrong with him. It's your leg, isn't it? Asia half asks. It still hasn't healed from yesterday. Frowning, Issei tries to play it off as not being as bad as it really is. It isn't really that bad. Issei denies, and Asia shakes her head in denial. Come with me. Asia says, reaching out and grasping his hand, the blonde nun suddenly filled with purpose. Issei doesn't have it in his heart to argue with her. The next thing Issei knows, he's sitting at one of many benches that surround a medium-sized man-made pond. Asia kneels in front of him, her hands held over his leg where the bullet passed through him, a soft green light suffusing the wound. After only a few moments the pain is gone, and Issei can't believe it. It feels as though he was never even hurt, his leg feeling like it did before he ever set foot in the apartment. Is that good? Asia asks as the light fades, Issei nodding appreciatively. Yeah. He answers enthusiastically, awestruck by Asia's ability to heal. It feels awesome. To prove his point, Issei stands up, moving his wounded leg up and down, not a flicker of pain on his face as he does so. Seeing him recovered, Asia smiles, the girl standing up as well, her expression seeming to shift to a faraway gaze, Asia's next words accompanied by a forlorn tone. When I was little I was abandoned, left at a church. Asia begins slowly, Issei stopping in his tracks at the sound of Asia's words, the young devil, realizing that Asia is telling him about her past. For years I lived there until one night a wounded puppy came into the church. Seeing it I prayed again and again for days with all my heart, and finally a miracle happened. Asia trails, raising her hands to show the pair of rings still on her middle fingers. After it happened the priest said it was a miracle, and they moved me to a much larger church. There they told me to heal the sick and wounded people that traveled there from all over the world to see me. I was very happy. I knew that I was helping people and that my gift really was a blessing. Then one day I saw a man who'd been hurt, and without thinking I helped him, but he wasn't a man, he was a devil, and when the priests found out they called me a sinner and heretic. Realization in his reply, Issei speaks carefully. So that's when you decided instead to serve the fallen angels, since you didn't have anywhere else to go? Issei asks, and Asia nods slowly. It's just like Pretty Boy said, where else is someone with a supernatural power to heal going to go? It is, but I really don't like it, Asia replies, her voice breaking. They do so many awful things in the name of God, but I know that this has to be a trial from the Lord. I know that if I endure this he'll grant me what I've always wanted. What you've wanted? Issei asks, and Asia nods, slowly bobbing her head in affirmation. I want to make friends, Asia replies in a small voice. I want to go shopping with them, talk with them, eat with them and do many other things with them, Asia explains, and Issei can't help the feeling of sympathy he feels for the girl. Actually, I'd really be happy with just one friend. Asia Issei trails, her own eyes looking down at the water, her hands on her lap. Well, we haven't gone shopping yet, but we've ate together and we've hung out all day, so I'd say that makes us friends. Blinking, Asia looks up at him, her blue eyes cautious and hopeful, the young woman opening her mouth to say something when another voice, a very familiar voice to both Issei and Asia, cutting her off. Not going to happen, Rainer's voice cuts into their conversation. The two of them blinking in surprise, both Asia and Issei follow the sound back to its source, the fallen angel standing in the middle of the small lake, her feet on the water. Uma, Issei offers in recognition, Asia's own voice showing that they've met, even as Issei moves to put himself between the nun and the fallen angel. Rainer Sama, Asia speaks, Issei blinking in surprise. Rainer? Is that a real name? So it's true, Rainer begins casually. I'd heard about your descent into devilhood, but I didn't really believe it. Come now, Asia, leave that annoying devil here and return with me. No. Asia denies, shaking her head in denial. I won't go back with you to that awful place. Asia turning her attention to Issei. I'm sorry, but I ran away from that church. I know, Issei replies, never once taking his eyes off Rainer. Don't worry Asia-chan, I'll protect you. Blinking Asia can feel her cheeks flush, a warm feeling filling her stomach at Issei's proclamation. You? Rainer asks dubiously. What do you think you can do against me? Or have you forgotten that I already killed you once? Care for another taste? Rainer asks, holding out her hand and forming a spear of light in her right hand. Crap. Divine dividing. Issei calls out, assuming a battle pose like an anime as his wings appear on his back, Rainer blinking in surprise at the sight of them. That's what you had? Rainer asks, staring at it a moment. Word from above was that you had a sacred gear that was dangerous to us, but if that's all it is, just a pair of odd-looking wings, then they must have been wrong. You'll see how dangerous I am. Issei denies, bracing himself, preparing to launch himself at Rainer and try and hit her. If he can't touch her, he can't steal her powers and weaken her. Rainer grins, her spear shooting into Issei's stomach. Feeling incredible pain surging through him, Issei drops to his knees, barely able to even stare remotely upright with Rainer's spear running him through. Fuck. This hurts. What the hell? I've never felt anything that hurt so bad. Issei-san. Asia cries out, Rainer's spear disappearing. Asia moves next to him, a green glow surrounding the wound. Feeling the pain recede, Issei blinks in surprise, looking up at her. Issei can feel the last vestiges of pain vanish. Asia-chan, Issei mumbles, not believing how much she's able to heal, and so quickly. Your twilight healing really is impressive, Asia. Rainer praises her, forming another light spear in her hand. Now, come with me and return to the church. Finishing with Issei's healing, Asia shakes her head in denial, refusing to acquiesce to Rainer's demands. No. I'm not going with you. Asia denies, and Rainer smirks. Alright then, Rainer begins. How about a deal? You come with me, and I won't murder that stupid devil trying to protect you. Both Issei and Asia blink in surprise at Rainer's statement, Issei immediately denying it. No way, she isn't going anywhere with you. Issei denies, Asia feeling that warm feeling fill her again. Issei-san. Her eyes locked on Issei. Asia doesn't see Rainer pull back her hand and toss her spear, Issei watching the fallen angel the entire time, he just reacts, doesn't think. Asia. Issei blurts out, grabbing her and pushing off of the ground, Issei feeling his feet leave the concrete, the two of them rising up into the air. Rainer asks, watching the two of them fly away from the impact point of her spear exploding a moment after it strikes, the two of them flying up and away from the blast zone, Issei and Asia hovering 15 feet in the air, Issei clutching onto her. His face contorting in surprise, Asia blinking before she realizes what is going on. Issei. Asia suddenly grabs hold of him, the nun holding on for dear life, while the two of them hover in the air, Issei blinking in surprise at his suddenly being airborne. I'm flying, Issei mumbles, momentarily awestruck by the thought. Before, when he'd launched himself at Fried, he'd been focused on hitting Fried and killing him, he hadn't even realized that when he charged Fried his feet hadn't hit the floor, never thought that he may have actually flew. So you can fly, Rainer replies matter-of-factly. Give me Asia and I'll spare you, you worthless low-level devil trash. His grip on Asia tightening ever so slightly, Issei shakes his head no. No, and you won't try and harm me. Issei denies. Stab me or cut me and you'll kill Asia too. Issei explains, and Rainer scoffs in disgust. She can't just kill the girl. If she did just kill Asia, it would destroy her twilight healing, and Rainer wants it more than she wants to hurt Issei. Asia's ability is powerful and rare, only 2 or 3 people a generation born with the twilight healing sacred gear, and without a means to detect dormant sacred gears in humans, the fallen angels have no idea where the other bearer is if there is one. Issei, let me go, Asia offers quietly, Issei and Rainer blinking in surprise. What? Asia-chan, what are you saying? Issei stares at her uncomprehending. I don't want you getting hurt because of me. Asia explains. If you died I'd never be able to live with myself, so I'll go with her. Smiling victoriously, Rainer can't believe her luck. There you see? Rainer asks. Asia is a good girl and wants to come with me all her own, so put her down and go away, you low-level trash. Still clutching onto Asia, Issei does not want to just hand her over to the fallen angel. No. Issei denies, shaking his head. I won't let you hurt Asia-chan. She's too good to be hanging around people like you. So what are you going to do? Rainer asks. It isn't as though we're the only people in the world. Are you just going to float there forever, trying to think of something? My comrades will come looking for me eventually, and when they do we'll find a way to pry Asia from you, without hurting her. Blinking, Issei lowers his gaze, his arms still wrapped around Asia, the young devil really not wanting to let the innocent girl go. But I need to get to Butchu. Then run, a strange but familiar voice whispers in Issei's mind, Issei blinking in surprise at the suggestion. At that voice, Issei mumbles, Rainer's face screwing in confusion. Voice? What voice? Rainer asks, and Asia blinks. Neither she nor Rainer heard anything. Issei mumbles, looking down at Asia. I only have two options. I can run and try to find Butchu, or I can let Asia go and let Rainer do whatever it is she wants with her, or I can try to protect her and probably die in the process. Knowing those are his only real options, Issei makes a split-second decision. Time to go. Turning away from Rainer, the fallen angel blinks in surprise. What are you? Rainer begins, Issei's course of action becoming clear to her as he begins to move away from her during the turn. Alright, I need to get to Kuo Academy as fast as I can. His wings glowing, Issei feels his sacred gear begin to move, Asia opening her mouth to ask what is going on when the two of them leap forward, Issei and Asia taking off like a bolt of light, a white streak, the only trace of the two of them as they disappear into the distance. Shit. Rainer growls, her spear vanishing, the fallen angel realizing that Issei is long gone. She's never seen a creature move that fast. He isn't here, but he'll likely run back to his master. He won't leave town, and we know exactly where his precious master is, so it's only a matter of time. The world passing by in a blur, the next thing Issei knows the two of them are hovering Kuo Academy, the two of them coming to a stop almost directly above the Occult Research Club building. Seeing that and hoping that Rias is inside, Issei starts to head toward the ground, Asia blinking in surprise at the sudden change in scenery. Where? Asia asks, turning her head left and right, her expression curious. Don't worry Asia-chan, you'll be safe here. Issei says, the two of them touching down on the ground, Issei's sacred gear vanishing as he releases Asia from his arms. But Asia mumbles, not wanting to do anything that might cause Issei to be hurt. She truly would prefer to sacrifice herself than allow her first friend to come to harm. Don't worry. Issei says again, taking her hand. Come with me, but you will know what to do. Leaning against the front of her desk, Rias Gremory sighs heavily, her entire peerage assembled around her inside the club room. Fortunately it's a Sunday, so there are only a small number of people in the school, and none of them saw Issei's little entrance. She'd only happened to be in the club room, trying to get a handle on what the fallen angels were planning when Issei came into her office, holding the hand of a blonde nun who looks like she's never been more confused. So that's what happened. Issei finishes his tale, telling Rias and the rest of the club how he and Asia came to be standing in the club room. Rias begins slowly. Do you realize what you've done? Blinking, Issei breaks eye contact with her, shame clouding his gaze. Issei trails. I just wanted to protect Asia-chan. Issei explains to them. It was either this or let that fallen angel take her. Exhaling, Rias can understand why Issei would choose to run, but that one single choice has brought all sorts of trouble down upon Rias and her servants. The fallen angels have some sort of interest in Asia and will undoubtedly come looking for her now that Issei has brought her here. I'm sorry. Asia speaks up, Rias blinking at the nun's sudden speaking. I'll go with the fallen angels when they come for me, so no one has to get hurt, Asia offers, and Rias blinks in surprise, Akeno, Yudo and Kaneko, all mirroring the emotion. That's very noble of you, sister, but I'm not just going to hand you over to those fallen angels. Rias replies, Issei blinking in surprise, happiness playing across his features. But you, Issei mutters her title, unable to believe that she's willing to protect Asia from the fallen angels. That's Asia tries to argue, but Rias cuts her off. No member of my family has any love for the fallen angels. Rias explains to the human. Whatever they want with you, we aren't going to just let them have you. Her face falling, Asia is about to try and say something when she looks around the room, seeing Ria's sentiment reflected in the faces of the other devils in the room. They're willing to protect me even though I'm nothing to them, Asia thinks to herself, wishing that she had friends like these. But you, what are we going to do? Issei asks, and Rias pushes off her desk, standing straight. Well, we aren't the only devils involved with this school, we can't really expect any help from the other group, Rias replies, Issei blinking in surprise. You mean there are other devils in the school besides the Occult Research Club? We're on our own. Kaneko says matter-of-factly, her tone flat. Nodding, Rias doesn't argue that point. However, we also have the advantage. Rias explains. The fallen angels have to come to us to take her, meaning we can fortify ourselves and make it as difficult as possible for them to assault us. How will we do that? Issei asks, and Rias smiles at him, the expression sending chills down Issei's spine for some unknown reason. 7 hours later. This really isn't necessary, Issei-san, Asia explains to him. I don't want you risking your life for me. Standing in the school gymnasium, Issei has his divine dividing out, the wings furled behind him with Asia nearby, the large open gym empty save for the two of them, the pair standing near the door on the opposite side of the building as the front of the building. Where Rias and the rest of the Occult Research Club wait. I'm not going to just hand you over to those fallen angels, Asia-chan. Issei explains, shaking his head. Besides, you heard Butchu's plan, we're going to win. Her gaze distraught, Asia lowers her eyes, her hands clasped together in front of her, the blonde woman doesn't want anyone to get hurt because of her. Seeing Issei and the other devils of the Orc Asia now knows what it looks like to have friends, to have precious people that will put their lives on the line for each other. More than anything else, Asia wishes that she'd been born a devil in the Gremory family rather than a human. If she were, she would have a sister like Ria's and a family that cares. Asia mumbles, not really sure what she wants to say. Don't worry. Issei assuages her, giving her a thumbs up. We'll beat those fallen angels and then you'll be free. You can make friends and do all the things you've ever wanted to without having worry about those damn things. Asia mumbles, pressing her hands together. I'd be happy if I could just be with you, Issei-san. Issei begins, about to say something to her when the doors on the opposite side of the gym burst open. At the same time, both Issei and Asia turn toward the sound and movement, the doors slamming against the interior walls, Rainer standing in the doorway in her fallen angel form, the sound of explosions, lightning and things being smashed coming in through the doorway. Balling his hands into fists, Issei puts himself between Asia and Rainer, the fallen angel casually walking into the gym and toward them, the woman clearly in no big hurry to get closer to them. She's probably just trying to make us sweat. Remember, stay calm. His knuckles wide, Issei keeps his eyes on Rainer, opening his wings to their full span, preparing to take to the air. Well, Rainer begins, casually striding toward them. You've certainly made yourself to be quite the pain in my ass. The light spear forming in her hand, Rainer glares at Issei. Were looks capable of murder, Issei would be struck dead at that moment. I told you already, I'm not letting you hurt Asia. Issei replies, an angry growl escaping Rainer's lips. Jesus Christ, you're like a broken record. All you ever say is I won't let you hurt her or I'm going to protect her. Rainer growls at him. You're the most annoying fucking low-class devil piece of shit I've ever met. His hands balled into fists, Issei doesn't flinch, the young devil standing his ground in spite of the fallen angel's proximity. You know what? Rainer begins. I think I'm not going to kill you, I'm going to beat you to a pulp, and when you're nothing but a pile of broken bones, I'm going to make you watch as my friends slaughter all your precious devil friends, starting with that red-haired bitch you call master. Grinning, Issei doesn't cower at Rainer's threat. I think you're the one who's going to end up a pile of broken bones. Issei replies. After all, my Butchu is the red-haired princess of destruction, Ria's Gremory. Issei reminds the fallen angel. Outside, Issei can hear the sound of Ria's using her magic, an explosion following shortly thereafter. Not to mention her right hand, Issei continues. Her queen and the priestess of thunder and lightning and a super sadist Akeno Himejima. At that moment thunder cracks, Akeno laughing joyously as lightning rains down. Not to mention her knight, the pretty boy Udo Kiba, knight of the sword and expert demon sword wielder. What kind of shitty sword is that? Fried's voice carries, Udo replying casually. This is my sword, Holy Eater, it consumes light and holy power. Inside the gym, Rainer scowls, clearly displeased with how the battle fares outside. Next is the Ruktauju Kaneko. While she may be small, she packs quite the punch. Issei explains, the sounds of men being hit and sent flying repeatedly wafting into the gym. And last but not least, me, her pawn Issei Haidu, super pervert and future harem king. Issei introduces himself, striking a pose. Standing there, a sweat drop forms on Rainer's head, the fallen angel looking at Issei skeptically. Hearing his introduction, Asia has no idea what he's talking about. Growing up in the church, Asia has no idea what a pervert or a harem is. So Rainer begins slowly, not knowing whether Issei is being serious or not. You're just a pawn and you expect to stand against me? Dropping his pose, Issei stands up straight, his sacred gear still on his back. I may be just a pawn right now, but you'll find that pawns are the most dangerous of all. Issei begins. 1 hour prior. Our strategy is going to hinge on you, Issei Arias explains, and Issei breaks eye contact with her, guilt coloring his tone. I'm just your pawn, Butchu, Issei replies carefully. Just release me from your family and I'll take Asia-chan and run. You don't have to risk your life for me, I'm just a worthless pawn after all. Blinking Rias gives Issei a hard look, the president of the Occult Research Club, clearly displeased with Issei's statement. I told you once that reincarnated devils have the same powers as the chess pieces they're named after. Rias explains. But a pawn is by far not the weakest piece. How? Issei blinks, not comprehending what Rias means. I'm not strong like Kaneko-chan, fast like Kiba, or powerful like Akeno-senpai, so what good am I to you? Promotion. Rias replies, and Issei blinks in surprise. Promotion? Issei asks and Rias nods. That's right. When a pawn gets deep into enemy territory, they are allowed to promote into any other piece other than the king. Rias explains to him. So, for example, if I were to designate, say, the school gym as enemy territory, then all you have to do is get there and you can promote into any other piece. Present. What are you talking about? Rainer demands, her patience wearing thin. A pawn is just a pawn, a worthless foot soldier, a throwaway piece. Then you obviously don't know anything. Issei denies. A real master has no throwaway pieces. Promotion. Rook. Issei thinks to himself, feeling something inside him shift with the thought. Just standing there, Issei knows that he's changed, that the promotion has already taken effect. Try this. Issei calls out, jumping forward, taking off toward Rainer. Grinning, Rainer pulls her arm back, throwing the spear with pinpoint aim, her strike flying straight toward Issei. Holding out his right hand, Issei runs into the spear head-on, Issei stopping in his tracks, a small barrier forming between him and the spear, sparks radiating off the point of impact, Issei gritting his teeth, the skin of his hand already feeling like it's starting to burn. Even though he isn't even touching the spear yet. Divide. The wings pulse, and Issei feels energy surge into his body, strength filling him, restoring him. So you've resorted to leeching strength from your allies now? All in a desperate attempt to keep yourself alive? Rainer goads. It doesn't matter how much strength you take from your friends, you're just making it easier for my subordinates to kill them. You wish, Issei mumbles, trying to fight against the spear burning his right arm. Try all you want, you can't destroy my spear. Light is poison to a devil, no matter how strong you are. Hovering there, his right arm grinding against the spear of light, Issei tightens his jaw. I can't fail, I have to win for Asia. Struggling against the spear, Issei pushes back, trying desperately to throw the spear aside and hit Rainer. I'm going to protect Asia, I'm going to protect her, and I'm going to make this woman pay for trying to kill me. His feelings surging inside of him, Issei hears a voice call out to him from the sacred gear. English Dragon Power Gift. The sacred gear speaks, and Issei blinks in surprise, not knowing what's going on as white light covers his entire body. Our gift, Rainer blurts out, staring in surprised shock as the white light begins to fade. What the hell is that? The light disappearing, Issei now wears a suit of white armor with blue jewels. Inside the armor, Issei feels like he's on top of the world, like he can move mountains. Looking at him, Asia sucks in a sharp breath of surprise. Seeing him covered in light and now clad in white armor, Asia is struck with the sudden image of an angel, as though Issei were her own personal guardian angel, ready to fight against anyone that would threaten her. Issei-san, Asia whispers, her hands held together near her lips, her eyes wide in awe. I'm possible. Rainer stares in shock, the spear pressing against Issei's gauntleted palm. Divide. The voice calls out, the light from the spear fading, Issei not feeling the familiar rush of energy that he normally feels when his sacred gear drains the energy from an opponent. Why did that happen? I didn't order the sacred gear to use its power, so why? For just a moment, Issei is allowed to contemplate that before a voice speaks in his mind. Hurry, boy. Don't you want your revenge? The voice from before goads Issei on, reminding him of what's happening. I don't know what this is or what's going on, but I'm not going to waste this. Issei declares. Flinging his right hand to the side, the spear shatters, disappearing in a small flash of light. The spear no longer impeding him, Issei shoots forward, the young devil like a freight train, and Rainer stands right in his path. Wait. Rainer cries out, fear on her face as Issei crosses the distance between them, drawing his left hand back. Take this. Issei roars, driving his left hand forward like a battering ram, slamming his left fist into Rainer's jaw, the fallen angel flying backward from the impact. Rainer crashing through the far side of the gym. Issei stands there, momentarily clad in the strange white armor before his body shines again, the armor disappearing along with the light, the sacred gear disappearing as well. His world spinning, Issei drops to his hands and knees, the young devil feeling like he's the one that's just been beaten. Feeling exhausted, Issei sucks in air, trying to fill the seemingly perpetual feeling of emptiness in his lungs. Issei-san. Asia calls out, Issei about to raise his head when suddenly he feels his arm being pulled up. But Job Haidu Kun Kiba praises him, the blonde boy draping Issei's right arm across his shoulders as he helps Issei up. Kiba, Issei mutters, footsteps drawing Issei's attention. Good work, Issei. Riaz praises him as she walks into the room, her uniform slightly ruffled from the fight outside. But you, Issei mumbles, not sure what exactly is going on as Riaz approaches him. The fallen angels are dead, though that stray priest managed to escape. Riaz explains to him, her gaze shifting to Asia. Are you hurt? Shaking her head no, Asia mumbles a negative, Riaz relieved that the human girl wasn't hurt during the battle. I'm fine, Rainer-sama never even touched me. Nodding, Riaz turns her attention back to Issei. But what about you, Issei, how do you feel? Tired, Issei mutters, feeling like he's just run a marathon. Though, your plan worked, but you. 30 minutes earlier. Standing in the clubroom, Issei is alone with Riaz, the red-haired president of the Occult Research Club, having already sent the rest of the club and Asia off to the gym to prepare for the fallen angels' attack. Riaz has already informed them what their general battle plan will be, their strategy being to lure the fallen angels to an area where they can battle without fear of collateral damage, but also where they can safely store Asia away from the battle. But you and everyone else are going to be waiting outside the gym. Well, I'm supposed to wait inside with Asia as her personal guard, but I don't understand what else she needs to talk to me about alone. But Issei begins awkwardly, Ria's sitting behind her desk, the last member of the club leaving just over 5 minutes prior. Knock, knock. The sound of someone gently tapping their fist against the club door is surprisingly loud to Issei, the young man starting in surprise at the sudden sound. Who could that be? Come in. Ria's calls, the doorknob turning, the door opening, revealing a pair of teenagers wearing the Kuo Academy uniform. That's the student council president Sauna Shitori and the vice president Tsubaki Shinra. What? Issei mumbles, confused as to why the student council would be at school this late and why Rias would want them here when fallen angels will soon be here. Greetings, Rias. Sauna offers politely, Rias standing up from behind her desk and walking out, smiling at the bespectacled dark-haired girl. Greetings, Sona. Rias replies warmly, Issei blinking in surprise. Sona? Issei asks, and Rias answers him. Issei, this is Sona Citri and Tsubaki Shinra, they're both part of the other group of devils that operate out of the academy that I mentioned earlier. Rias explains, and Issei blinks, understanding settling on his gaze. Sauna Shitori is my alias while I am attending here. Sona explains to him. My real name is Sona Citri, though please refrain from using it in front of any normal students. Nodding, Issei doesn't say anything, the young pawn choosing to stay quiet. So Rias begins. I take it you're here to respond to my offer. Offer? Issei thinks. What offer? That's right. Sona answers, addressing Rias. What offer? Issei asks, and Rias smiles at him. I asked Sona to allow us to borrow her queen's power during the upcoming battle. Rias explains, and Issei blinks in surprise. Borrow her power? Issei asks, and Rias nods, Tsubaki's face chiseled from stone for all the emotion it shows. That's right. Sona affirms again, her voice stoic. Rias has asked me to allow you to absorb my queen's power with your divine dividing sacred gear. Blinking, Issei turns his head toward Rias. You told her about my sacred gear? Issei asks, and Rias nods. Of course. Rias replies. Your sacred gear's ability to divide another creature's strength in half and then add it to your own is incredibly powerful, but in this battle, you might not be able to touch your opponent before needing a boost in power. If you touch Tsubaki with your sacred gear active and keep it active until after the battle, you'll be able to divide her power and add it to your own, something the fallen angels won't be suspecting, and it could give you the edge you need to defeat your opponent. I see Issei trails thoughtfully. So Rias begins, turning her attention back to Sona. Do we have an agreement? Staring at Rias, Sona's face is an impassive, emotionless mask, Issei wondering just how Rias knows the robot-like student council president. She's considered to be the third most attractive girl in school after Rias and Akeno, though Issei doesn't know anything else about her. She, along with the rest of the members of the student council, tend to keep to themselves. We do. Sona answers, and Rias smiles at her friend. Thank you, Sona. Rias offers warmly, and Issei blinks in surprise. Why are you agreeing to something like this? Why don't you just help us in defeating these fallen angels? Issei asks, and Sona rounds her gaze on him, the look on her face making Issei suddenly feel like a 5-year-old with his hand caught in the cookie jar. You have brought the attention of these fallen angels upon yourselves. If you wish to risk your lives protecting a former sister of the church, then that is your choice, but I am not going to risk the lives of my family for something that has nothing to do with me. Sona explains to him. That said, no devil has any love for any fallen angel, and if my assistance in this manner will aid you and Rias in killing a few of them, then so long as the lives of my people aren't at risk, I'm willing to help. Present. With that, he'd brought out his sacred gear and shook hands with Tsubaki. After that, Issei made his way to the gym, Rias walking with him. Issei was infinitely glad that the school is deserted. For a normal human to see him with a pair of giant light wings on his back, they would likely start asking questions that would be difficult to answer. Good, I'm sure gaining strength without actually touching Rainer was quite the surprise for her. That power and the promotion are the only reasons you were even able to wear the armor, a familiar voice whispers in Issei's ears. What? Issei mumbles, his eyes going wide at the voice in his head. Opening her mouth to answer, Issei stops before she begins, the far look in Issei's eyes telling her that he isn't speaking to her. You asked for power, and I gave it to you. Unfortunately for you, your body could only handle that strength for a scant few moments before I had to take it back. Fortunately, it was long enough for you to get satisfaction against that creature that nearly killed us. Who are you? Issei whispers. I am the Vanishing Dragon Albion, and I reside inside your sacred gear. It is my armor that you were wearing when you defeated that fallen angel. It was me that told you to flee when you faced her before. Issei mumbles, Yudo, Asia and Rias watching him, none of them quite sure what is going on with their newest member. Listen well, the red one will come eventually, and when he does you must be stronger if you're going to defeat him. Red one? Issei asks aloud, both Asia and Yudo looking to Rias, their expressions curious, but the red-haired devil simply shrugs her shoulders, clueless as to what Issei is talking about. His eyes seeming to come back into focus. Albion doesn't reply to Issei, instead his mind is filled with only his own thoughts again, Rias speaking slowly and carefully. Issei, are you alright? Rias asks, genuine concern in her voice. Blinking, Issei looks up at her, giving the president a reassuring smile. Yeah, I'm fine, just a little exhausted. Issei tries to assuage her. Opening her mouth to ask who Issei was talking to, the question has yet to form on Ria's lips when Kaneko calls from the open gym door. I'm back. Her voice carries Rias, Yudo, Issei and Asia, all turning toward her to watch as Kaneko drags Rainer's body back into the gym. Well, Rias begins, putting her back to Issei to face Rainer, as Kaneko unceremoniously tosses the still-breathing fallen angel onto the ground at Ria's feet. Look what the cat dragged in. For a moment no one talks, a sweat drop forming on Yudo, Issei and even Kaneko. Bet you that was a bad joke. Rainer groaning in pain, the fallen angel pushes herself up to her hands and knees, looking up at Rias, as the red-haired princess of ruin begins to glow with dark power. My servant didn't finish you, so I thought I would do you the honor of finishing you myself. Rias begins, her power forming around her hands. Blinking, Rainer knows that she is in no shape to fight, that her only hope of saving her own life lies in convincing Rias to spare her. Issei-kun, a very familiar voice reaches his ears, Issei blinking in surprise to see Rainer now looking like Yuma, his gift to her still tied on her left wrist. Issei-kun, please don't let her kill me. Issei's gaze wavering, Yudo narrows his eyes, the fact that Issei is leaning on him heavily, the only thing stopping Kiba from drawing his sword. Please Issei-kun, Rainer pleads with him. I really did treasure our time together, and I never meant to hurt you, I only did that because I was told to. See? Yuma asks, holding up her left hand and the bracelet there. I really did enjoy our date together, I even kept this because I love you. His gaze wavering, Issei looks away from Yuma, his voice gravelly and low as he replies. I would have treated you like a queen. Issei begins quietly. You were my first girlfriend, I spent days planning our date, I would have bent over backwards for you but instead you betrayed me. Issei closes his eyes, the motion seeming to take much of what remains of his strength. His own voice coming out as a small plea as he continues. But you please finish it, I don't have the strength. Her countenance darkening, the energy around Ria's hands grows, Rainer realizing in that brief moment that she's going to die. Are you sure, Issei? Rias asks. Wouldn't you rather have her as a harem slave? Blinking, Issei looks back to Rias, the red-haired devil looking at him curiously, Issei opening his mouth curiously. Slave? Issei asks weakly, and Rainer feels a pit of dread form in her stomach. That's right. Rias explains to him. You can bind this fallen angel to you. It isn't normally done, since usually only high-class devils can do it, but since you're the White Dragon Emperor, you shouldn't have a problem. How? Issei asks, still leaning heavily on Kiba. Neither Kiba nor Kaneko knows how to feel about following with Ria's suggestion. Neither of them has any love for fallen angels, though the thought of humiliating one of them by making them a slave does have its own twisted draw. Her aura fading, Rias walks over to where Issei stands, Rias reaching out, grasping the hilt of Kiba's sword, Rias drawing the blade from its sheath. All you have to do is have her drink your blood. Rias explains. My blood? Issei asks, and Rias raises the sword, the point now pointing up toward the ceiling. Hold out your hand, Issei, and I'll cut it. Once your blood is on the sword I'll make her lick it and then she'll be bound to you as a slave. She'll have to do whatever you want her to do when you want her to do it. Issei trails, not sure what to say as he holds out his hand. Rias touching his hand with her left hand, Rias presses the sword against Issei's palm, Kiba's blade slicing into Issei's flesh, Asia winching at the sight of the sword piercing Issei's flesh, the young devil gritting his teeth at the pain that flares through him. Blood on the blade, Rias turns away from Issei, Rainer still on her hands and knees, her eyes going wide in shock as Rias walks over toward her. Holding the blood-stained blade out for Rainer to lick, Rias glares down at Rainer. The fallen angel staring at the sword, Rainer's eyes flicker between Rias and the sword. Drink the blood, fallen angel, or I'll kill you. Her voice is cold, Rias staring down at the fallen angel, the beaten woman swallowing. Rainer stares at the sword, feeling conflicted. She doesn't want to die, she most definitely doesn't want to die, but on the other hand, she doesn't want to spend the rest of her life as some annoying devil's slave. Rias glowing with dark power, Rainer swallows the saliva in her mouth, feeling like she's been caught between a rock and a hard place. On one hand I die. On the other hand I live. Opening her mouth, Rainer sticks out her tongue, pressing it against the blood-stained section of the sword. Rainer slowly drags her tongue along the side of the sword. Swallowing the blood on her tongue, Rainer closes her eyes, feeling a strange, uncomfortable feeling flowing down her throat. Her face contorted in disgust. Rainer doesn't say anything. Issei on the other hand doesn't feel anything for a moment after Rainer swallows his blood. Then Issei feels a jolt of electricity flare inside his body, like being struck by a bolt of lightning. Ah! Issei cries out in pain, Asia blinking in surprise. At the same time Rainer feels the surge of current, as though lightning were coursing through her veins, burning her from the inside out. Screaming in pain Rainer doubles over, feeling the pain surging through her, even as Issei succumbs to the sensation. Issei-san. Asia cries out his name, the young blonde's voice mixing with Rainer's scream, the sounds the last thing Issei hears before he slips off to unconsciousness. End of the part 1 here. So that's it for today's video guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends. Bye.